So let's continue. Well, yesterday we've talked about first you have to get rid of the attitude of being entirely unwilling to face any suffering ourselves, and then second, to cultivate the attitude of actually being joyful when suffering arises. So these two are really important. That's where we stopped yesterday. First of all, let's look at dropping the attitude of being entirely unwilling to suffer. I think for many people, many people would think that, how can you do that? Because I don't want suffering. Many people would wish that, please don't let me feel suffering and pain. I would like to have happiness and peace and calm and safety all the time. You could think in such a way, but that's just really wishful thinking. Because due to everyone's different karma, the life and situation happens in your life would be very different, would differ from one and another. So it's really just making, you're just really making an empty wish. You could say as much as you want that, please let me be safe and happy and healthy. You could do that. Of course, you could make such wishes, but is it going to come true? Well, really not necessarily. Just like the young people would go to different temples and monasteries, that's what they would do. There are times, of course, such prayers would work, but not necessarily all of them would work, because everyone's karma, the wind of karma is really strong, just like a flood coming to, just like the flood into a valley. The flood could have carried lots of strength. So whenever your karma ripens, you could pay $10 to the bodhisattvas and ask the bodhisattvas to protect you, but the karma that you've accumulated is from a very long period of time, from lifetimes. Can you resolve that with $10? Well, that's very difficult to say. Just like if a thief tried to bribe a police or the supervisor of the police with $10 and ask them, can you please not lock me up? Well, it's a little bit difficult. That is to say, in fact, all the karma that we've accumulated, in fact, carries lots of strength and lots of force. So it is very difficult to avoid suffering in your life. Even if you go and get ordained to take different vows, lay practitioner vows, and so on, try to avoid suffering. But when the karma is matured, wherever you run to, you cannot escape from such suffering or such matured fruition. So what's the only way out then? From the Mahayana practitioner's point of view or practice point of view, just like when we studied the 7 practices of training the mind, I think this is quite important. It's important to repeatedly to study that, because you cannot only study it for 1 year. You should really familiarize yourself and repeatedly study that, so that slowly will make your mind more malleable, more tamed. Similarly, when you study this teaching, this fifth instruction, it will be helpful to your life and practice. What kind of help would it provide? It would help you in such a way that you would realize the mind of rejecting suffering is not of any use. It doesn't matter what kind of suffering or a feeling of rejection or sadness whenever obstacle comes. Simply thinking that I don't want suffering doesn't work. It doesn't provide any solution. When suffering appears, you can think all you want that I don't want you to come. I don't want suffering to come. However, you really can't stop it. You cannot stop flooding. You cannot stop it with any easy ways. There's no easy way out. So what should you do? Of course, if you have different methods, of course you can try to avoid it. In terms of your lifestyle, in terms of through your practice, if you can avoid letting suffering to fall onto your shoulders, of course you can do that, because Mahayana Buddhism is not about taking up unnecessary sufferings. It is good if you can avoid it. But when the suffering is already here or is already coming and you cannot stop it, by only thinking that please don't let me suffer, please don't let any obstacles happen, it doesn't make any changes, it doesn't make any difference, therefore it's not necessary. You will only become more and more weak and more fragile and more upset and more unnecessary. Just like when people get sick, of course it would be wonderful to be healthy, but when you're sick, if you keep thinking that I don't want to get sick, why am I getting sick? Why me? If you keep thinking in such a way, in fact, just simply being upset won't contribute any favorable condition for you to get healthy. Rather, it would make you feel more anxious, more upset, and make your health decline. People would go to hospital, and then if the doctor tells them that they are having late-stage cancer, stage 4 cancer, and some people would say that, well, it's fine. Early stage, late stage, it's fine. And the doctors say, well, you need to take surgery and then chemotherapy. But there are people who once heard that, they're just completely collapse. They cannot hold this with their mind at all. They cannot face it. That's just really because you don't have big strength in your heart, in your mind. And because of such lack of strength in your mind, then you may have, your condition may even worsen. But if you have strength in your mind, thinking that, well, if I get sick, I get sick, and it's just impermanence. If you have such kind of mentality and such kind of mindset, then at least they won't make your illness worse. This is quite important. People may think that, why me? I think there are people who kept on saying, why me? And this is such a funny way of thinking. There are practitioners I heard, they would say, why are you coming to me? There's so many other people you could ask for. Just as if a person who committed murder got caught, and then the murderer would say that, why did you catch me? There are so many other people who killed other people, who killed people, why me? I think this is quite a silly way of thinking, this why me mentality. Therefore, throughout practice, in fact, we've already learned that sentient beings in the three realms, in the three realms, they have to face death, illness, and all different kinds of obstacles sooner or later. We may want to have happiness. We would cry out for happiness. All of those hot terms that's online that says happiness and health. But is it really true? Is that really what you have inside? I think you can really look inside and see for yourselves. So no matter what, if you have a little bit of realization in your mind, you should not let anything to disturb your mind. Just as in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, where it says that whatever things I encounter, I would not abandon a heart or a mind of joyfulness. If suffering is if obstacles, if worrying does not provide a solution, why worry? Because it would even harm all the possibilities of good actions. Just like from the medical point of view, if you get anxious or upset, your immune system would decline and your health would decline as well. So when people get diagnosed with some severe illness and then got notice from hospital right away, they feel terrified and then they get really anxious and upset and depressed. And in such a way, you would encounter even worse health conditions. So we need to have rather a very calm and practice with a mind of equanimity. This is quite important, because once you get weak or once you get beaten down by the obstacles, I think the situation could worsen. The next one, and then it says that you should repeatedly contemplate so that you will have a sense of firm understanding or determination. What does it mean by having this determination? What does it mean by absolute convinced by this? It means that you have to develop certainty. It is whenever suffering occurs in your life or adversity occurs in your life, instead of thinking that, why me, it's so unfortunate, it's so unlucky, instead of thinking of that, you should develop certainty and do not make a fuss about it. Rather have a rather peace of mind. If you don't know what certainty of if you don't understand what develop certainty is, you should study the torch of certainty, and then you will be able to understand. Then say to yourself, from now on, whatever I have to suffer, I will never become anxious or irritated. Go over this again and again in your mind and summon all your courage and determination. I think this is really important. This is a very important paragraph. There are people who would say that I've never encountered suffering. I'm really happy. I'm really optimistic. I think that's really because you haven't noticed, or maybe there haven't been something that is rather very difficult for you to deal with yet. So you should study this if you want to be able to face different obstacles. Whatever obstacles, some of them could be because of relationships or because of illness, because of slandering, or because of not enough food or enough clothing to keep you warm, or loss of freedom. So there's so many different kinds of sufferings that mundane beings or sentient beings would suffer, such as 8 kinds of or 10 kinds of sufferings, and all the way to immeasurable number of sufferings. So whenever you think about suffering, we should again and again contemplate in your mind, think about that. Whatever I have to suffer, I will never become anxious or irritated. Instead of feeling that oh, finally class is over, Kenpo is getting so talkative and kept on repeating himself and no longer read the book or listen to the class again, that is not called repeatedly and diligently and wholeheartedly to devote in this teaching. In fact, after today's class, you should read it, tomorrow you should read it, day after you should study repeatedly every day, and you should diligently practice practice on it. This kind of rule applies to studying of any new knowledge, so that slowly and slowly the knowledge and the teachings would make a difference in your life. Otherwise, if you only dabble tiny bit on the surface of it and just said, oh, I studied it, I read it, I glimpsed through it, it's okay, I think this kind of mentality is not going to help you in any of practical situations. On top of that, you should practice with great determination and diligence. There are people only say that, well, I should transform suffering to enlightenment, but they're really just saying it in a very superficial way because they haven't really practiced it with lots of determination. If you practice on the great perfection, practicing on impermanence, but you only practice for one session and without any great determination or devotion, then you only have 1 or 2 minutes of sitting, practicing Guru Yoga or so. I think it's not really going to help you. Of course, there are people who practice for only as short as 1 or 2 minutes, but they would practice with such great devotion and determination, and from their facial expressions, we can see that they have great devotion. So it is important to practice with great determination.